Now, imagine if the United States had a successful Copa America run. Imagine we're preparing for the final against Argentina. It would be hard to imagine that we would get as much on the newswire and enough interaction and content and social media activity than we are getting right now with Gregg Berhalter being out as U.S. men's national team manager. But it certainly has caused it. It feels like another breaking point for the sport here in this country, much like the failure of not qualifying for the 2018 World Cup, aka 2017 Cuva. And here we go. Obviously, with that giant iceberg on the horizon, that 2026 World Cup. It's not an iceberg, but it could be a great many things, depending on how it goes. It's an incredible opportunity. I think we will all agree. And now we begin the process to get the right person to help us perform as well, whatever that looks like. The U.S. is not going to win the World Cup in 2026. They're not going to make a final. Probably not. They're not going to make a semifinal. Okay, but a successful run. Remember, it's an expanded tournament. It's an extra layer of knockout rounds, so it's going to be very difficult. But whatever that looks like, and for me, it's not just success on the field. It's getting people excited about the sport here, creating new fans, because the fandom for soccer in this country remains minuscule. Regardless of what you think, I can assure you it is. I've been covering it long enough. We are very loud, but we are a very small percentage. And you can tell that by the number of people who go see these games. The amount of people who are sophisticated about what's happening with U.S. soccer is an even smaller number. I can assure you that's the case. But we want to create that. We want to create euphoria. We want young kids to grow up and say they want to play in a World Cup. All of that. And that happens off the field. That happens in the build-up. But obviously winning games is first and foremost. So this is a huge responsibility, and we will go over all of it here on the Soccer OG. Check out the Soccer OG podcast. I'll be joined by Tony Kerki of Apple TV, and we'll break down the Copa America and see how it's run its course and talk about what happened in Charlotte with Uruguay and Colombian fans and Uruguayan players. It's a very big deal. Not what you want to see for a Copa America hosted here. Certainly you don't want that when the World Cup rolls around. So food for thought. Like and subscribe us. We've been getting so many likes and some new subscribers. I appreciate you joining in here. I like to shoot straight. I'm not going to live in the land of make-believe. We move forward. So Gregg Berhalter is out a post-mortem on what he has done. And we've talked about it before. The job after 2017 is difficult. There's a lot of things that happened that we are probably not privy to, but the player base is in a much better condition. The mechanism for U.S. soccer is in a better condition. He did and slightly exceeded what we would have liked a manager to do at the World Cup and dominating our region, which of course, it's not his fault that our region has fallen on hard times, namely Mexico, but you still dominate the region, so it's all good. Now, pressure mounted. We saw it all over the media. We saw it with the small accounts, and then you see the big media people kind of putting pressure on U.S. soccer. We saw it with the supporter groups, American Outlaws, and others. So U.S. soccer, certainly aware of the displeasure for Gregg Berhalter right now in 2024. This last year, we didn't see growth. I thought we did see growth from up till 2022. Whether he should have been brought back for a second cycle is another debate. I don't think he should have. He did. I was okay with it at the time, but we have certainly regressed, and now we're in a bad situation. And we got to get it right. The criticism for Gregg, I understand, but so many people made it personal, and that really bothers me because there's no need for that. I want people to remember what Gregg Berhalter did. It was a tough job. He did a nice job. This is also a guy, an exemplary American soccer player in his day. He was on the field for the most important game the U.S. ever played, the quarterfinals for the World Cup. This is a great servant. So when people say nasty things, put clown wig on his head, and he's a decent coach. He's a good coach. Everyone says it. Not me, coaches do. So I just wish it didn't get to that. It's nasty, and we got to keep an eye on that moving forward. I know it won't fix it because we've gone a little crazy with all of this. So now we move forward to see what we want. What are we willing to do to get that? And who are the people that are out there that we can come to bring in. Now, Matt Crocker, who continues to be nowhere to be seen. We've heard from him on quotes. I would suggest U.S. Soccer, if they listen to this, and I think they do. I know a lot of people at U.S. Soccer. Fox has a huge Sunday coming up. They have the Euro 2024 final, then they have the Copa America final. Fox should get an exclusive with Matt Crocker, 10 minutes long. Make it safe. You can vet all the questions and come out in front so people know what you look like. Some people forgot. And tell them what you're looking for. All of that. Fox gets a great exclusive. U.S. Soccer gets in front of it and at least can push back on some of the criticism. You've got to get in front of this. And you've got to be visible. You don't have to be transparent, but you got to show at least you're trying a little bit to cater to your fans. Because look, most sports teams are not transparent. I get it. And why should U.S. Soccer be transparent? But they still get in front of these things. So do it, U.S. Soccer. Sunday, right before the Copa America final, get out there, Matt Crocker exclusive. He has said some things. He said that money will not be a factor. Great. That's important to hear. And he's going to have to back that up. He also said he's in a much better place than he was 12 months ago. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here. Because he could have came in here when he rehired Gregg. It takes time to build your contacts and all of that. So when he says he's in a better place 12 months later, I believe it. And I think he has a better vision. He has better contacts. He has some people in mind. As he says, the search has begun. And we would say, why hasn't it begun already? I truly believe he meant it has already begun prior. There are some candidates out there, and I'm sure there's contact that has been made. And we'll get into that here in a moment. But again, let's be realistic. U.S. Soccer has plenty of flaws, but they're in charge, and they got to be better at a lot of things. But we got to give them some of the benefit here sometimes as well, because we have no choice, quite frankly. They're not going to throw out the baby and the bathwater, okay? And we're in a position where U.S. soccer is still American soccer is not so strong where we can get pitchforks out and make a difference. This isn't the NFL. This isn't Major League Baseball. Sorry, this isn't U.S. basketball in many ways. So Doug McIntyre broke the story that Gregg Berhalter had been dismissed. And Doug McIntyre is a good friend of ours. He also then had a list of possible candidates that could come in to replace Gregg. And he gave a number to it. Now, if it's the guy who broke the story and he has that data, I would suggest those numbers have some validity to it. So we can go through that list. And before I get in that list, there's something that U.S. Soccer has to their benefit in bringing a coach. Now, there's really no urgency. I know that sounds crazy. There is urgency, but there's not. There's urgency to name somebody, get him in there so they can start doing the job. There's a game in September and October and November. It's a one-off game. And then after that, there's not a whole lot of activity for the U.S. Soccer Gold Cup in 2025. And then we move on to full preparation for the World Cup. The U.S. is already qualified for the World Cup, so there's no pressure for a manager to come in and qualify a team. And I think that's valuable. It is valuable. That takes the pressure right off. You have to deliver at the 2026 World Cup. You got to look decent and show improvement, but you got to deliver. Maybe that's harder than I think, but I'll tell you what, it's a lot better than having to go through that process of going to CONCACAF and going to El Salvador and going to Trinidad and Tobago and qualifying. So that's a positive route. So you can name somebody, and wherever they are, let's say it's Jurgen Klopp, and I can assure you Jurgen Klopp is not taking this job. You can say, you're the guy, you can stay in Germany, and start looking at tape of players, start doing Zoom calls, start getting familiar, and then you come for the games, go back to Germany, and settle in. There's no hit the ground running business. If you're going to spare no expense and go out for the top candidates, this is what U.S. Soccer certainly should do. So those are the positives here. It's a high-pressure situation, we know, but not an initial high-pressure situation. You can ease into that, and that's going to make it easier to get a bigger name coach. So let us go to the coaches that have come up. And getting back to that Doug McIntyre list, Steve Cherundolo had an 8 out of 10, suggesting he is the favorite. I just so happened to be working with LAFC, was at their Open Cup game. That question was asked, and I love what Coach Cherundolo addressed it. He didn't come out and say, no, that's not true, yada, yada, yada. He said his focus was with LAFC. He deflected, but I hate it when coaches say there's no truth to that, and all of a sudden, they're taking the job. It happens all the time, and it bothers me to no end, and it still happens. So he didn't do that, which tells me that there is some truth to it. Steve Cherundolo, I've seen it up close, and maybe I have, the black and gold glasses. I think this guy would do a wonderful job because of what he's done with his club in developing players, in creating a system, adapting, creating a new system, having a team that's been lights out since the first day he's arrived. It was a high-pressure club. I know it's MLS. He's had young European players, and he's allowed them to adapt to MLS immediately in Timothy Tillman and as well as Mateusz Bogusz. So all of that is really good. He's not very experienced, and I can understand that should be something that takes him off the top line. We want experience, right? We want someone who can come in and lay it out and says, I got the vision, I've done this before, been there, done that, let's go, not my first rodeo. He is there at the top of that list. Wilfried Nancy, another one at Columbus. I don't think either of these, I think both these guys have such a good gig, and they like being club coaches, because remember, coaching a national team, you don't have these players that often. It's got to be pretty holistic, right, on how you build this team in many ways. You got to have a good gut, because they're not going to be in front of you all the time. You don't just say, oh, these European-based players will plot them in, because that got Gregg in some problems. You got to look at these guys that have a little something, whoever that might be, and it's going to be some MLS players. We should have had some MLS players on here, because they are players that feature on their team, and that was lacking on this national team. Guys that have that responsibility to lead their team to victory. All eyes turn to them. Outside of Christian Pulisic and Anthony Robinson, we don't really have that. Gio Reyna, by the way, I would encourage him, and I bet you the new coach would encourage him to come to MLS and be the guy. He can keep going around trying to find the right club, but that's not helping his career at all. Playing games will help. We can have this debate till we're blue in the face, but playing games trumps where you play. I think we've seen that with the Copa America. So things could look a little different with the player pool. So the two MLS coaches there at the top, we've heard Patrick Vieira, Thierry Henry, who seems quite happy with his, doesn't have really the coaching credentials to rule out Steve Cherundolo, Thierry Henry. And by the way, Steve Cherundolo, decorated player. He's no Thierry Henry, but how decorated of a player do we want in this situation? Does it make this big of a difference? Gareth Southgate, who people are going to freak out about. I would take Gareth Southgate. Could be leading his team to a European championship. The debate on Gareth Southgate is tactically it doesn't always look good, but he gets the results. And then the other thing is he's got these great players, so it gives him a huge benefit. Well, you still got to win the games. USA has these great players, right? So I think that one would make some sense. Jose Mourinho's been mentioned. Well, Jose Mourinho's got a job. So, think about it. We need something for now. I've talked about after 2026, we've got to be focused for how the exit strategy from the World Cup is, because that's where we really want to get good. Because we're not going to win it in 2026, but maybe we get closer in 2030. I feel crazy even saying that we're going to win a World Cup. It just feels so far away. It feels further away than a year ago or 2 years ago. Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp would be amazing. And he's not going to take this job. Jurgen Klopp, he's already been approached, which is good news, and said no, they could go back to him. And I don't know if it's about the money. He has piles of money from his post-Liverpool careers. If it is about the money, I don't know if I want Jurgen Klopp as much as I wanted him in the first place. It never struck me as a guy who says, I want the Brinks truck backed up. I want Lionel Messi money. I don't see him that way. So you also listen to Jurgen Klopp, how he exited Liverpool. And all the reasons he left the club why would he come back to this situation? It could be pretty thankless, right? And it could really diminish his coaching image, because there's no guarantees this is going to end well, regardless of who takes the job. It's tricky, it's slippery. So Jurgen Klopp, it's not happening. I'm not even saying it could happen, it's not happening. Mauricio Pochettino's out of work, but he's going to look for the next big job, right? He's going to want tenure. You look more at guys that could coach a national team, right? Let's look at Hervé Renard. I would love it. Hervé Renard, look at him, isn't he dashing? So this is a guy who's been a very specific national team manager in Africa, had some amazing success. In 2012, he won the African Cup of Nations with Zambia, which is incredible to say when you think of all the heavyweights in the African continent. Did it again with the Ivory Coast. Bit of a mercenary, comes in and out. But maybe that's what we are looking for. Maybe that's the right fit. Now, coaching in Africa is very different than coaching anywhere else in the world. They should do a documentary about these European coaches that coach in Africa, because it's got to be it's a beat of a different drummer, to put it mildly. Took Morocco to the 2018 World Cup. They did okay. They were in a difficult group. Took Saudi Arabia to the 2022 World Cup, beat Argentina, and then didn't do much afterwards. So to say that he has excelled teams in the World Cup is not accurate. He has done well on the international stage. I would be fine with Hervé Renard. How about an Argentine coach? I want Marcelo Gallardo, who has developed so many great players for the Argentine national team in this sense. When he was at River Plate, Julian Alvarez, Enzo, I'm getting confused with Enzo Perez, Montiel, all of these guys who have been part of this Argentine national team. He develops players very well. He has a USA connection, having played in MLS. A guy like Nestor Lorenzo, who is the coach of Colombia, who might be on his way to winning this. Colombia got him from the Peruvian league. So maybe you look for a guy like that. I mean, Nestor Lorenzo just coached the doors off of Marcelo Bielsa in that semifinal. But would Nestor Lorenzo brought in, would that people get excited? Can they draw Nestor Lorenzo over? Probably not at this moment. Colombia ain't going to let him go. But that was a slam dunk. But that's a coaching candidate you have to look through the cracks a little bit. So I can't tell you who it is. There's some guys that I would like. I like everyone on the list. But it's a very big decision, and we will continue to keep tabs on it. In the meantime, U.S. Soccer, get in front of this thing and keep us in touch. And they made the right call here. It was time. We'll continue to cover it here on the Soccer OG. Check out the Soccer OG podcast, where all podcasts are available. Like and subscribe us here, and we'll talk to you very soon.